Welcome into Sideline Signal. I am Andrew, as always, joined by my wonderful co host, Tyler. We are finally here. We are a day away from the NFL draft. There's a lot of crazy moving pieces, but we are here with our final NFL mock draft for the first round. It's going to be a crazy one. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that have changed since our last mock draft a few weeks ago. But before we officially get into it, Tyler, how are you feeling about the NFL draft in Green Bay tomorrow?
I am excited, and I'll tell you why. Leading up to the draft, you hear about all these different rumors, so many different moving pieces, as you mentioned, and I don't want to seem and take credibility away from myself, but there is so many different options for so many of these teams. When you talk about possible trades or just different selections, there's been a lot of smoke and mirrors in the top five, top three specifically, leading up to it. So to see how this all shakes out is going to be really exciting and fun to watch. I just hope my team gets it right at that three spot.
As do I, hoping the Raiders do us well in the sixth pick. But without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? Tennessee Titans at the first overall pick. Nothing shocking here for all the fans at home and for us. It's pretty clear and cut. Tennessee Titans need a quarterback, and with that first overall pick, they're gonna take Cam Ward. He's been the consensus first overall pick the entire draft process. It should come as no surprise. But yeah, Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward, 101. We're gonna be seeing that tomorrow night.
Yeah, and we've had this all three of our mock drafts, and this was really no question. They're searching for a face of the franchise, really consistent quarterback play since the beginning of the Ryan Tannehill tenure and Marcus Mariota in pieces as well. Hopefully they get that with Cam Ward, and he brings his talents to Nashville. So moving on to the second pick, we got the Cleveland Browns. Now, there might be some people up in the air. Abdul Carter's sitting there, Travis Hunter, possibly Shedeur Sanders. They need a quarterback. What are you thinking of those options?
Yeah, I think honestly, in my personal opinion, they should go for a quarterback because obviously having the roster right now of Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett isn't going to win you a Super Bowl. It's just not. And then obviously having Deshaun Watson on the back burner, who I can't wait till he's out of the league. They should go for a quarterback because they need it for the future, especially some of the selling point of bringing Myles Garrett back was that they were going to be a playoff level team and a competitive team. I don't see that with their current roster of quarterbacks, but that being said, it's been pretty clear throughout the media in the last few weeks leading up to the draft that their eyes are set towards Travis Hunter, and I think tomorrow night that, it might be a little bit of a surprise because you could argue, like I said, a quarterback or Abdul Carter, but I think right now the way it's looking, they want to get some youth into that receiver core and a guy that could potentially also buff up their secondary. So I think Travis Hunter is going to be the direction that they go in.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think it's going to be Travis Hunter at 2. And I'll tell you what, Browns fans, you may watch a lot of 14-6 games. That defense was already good. And it's only going to get better when you add Travis Hunter and, of course, you bring back Myles Garrett along with the other signings they had in free agency. But hopefully, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that Joe Flacco starts week 1 for this team unless they take Shedeur or a quarterback early. Hopefully he can spread the ball out to Jerry Jeudy and Travis Hunter. It's going to be exciting to watch, but I think they're pretty much mailing it in for next year. That's kind of what it seems like. But you get an extreme talent on both sides of the ball with Travis Hunter there. So on to the third pick, my New York Giants. Guys, if they don't take Abdul Carter with this third pick, I may not watch the season. We've been waiting for this. He posted something about Lawrence Taylor a couple days ago on his Twitter story. This guy is staring us right in the face. They already have a good pass rush, and adding Abdul Carter would just make it possibly the best in the league, which is something that Giants fans haven't been able to say since like 2011 when they won the Super Bowl. But every winning team is built on good defense and good pass rush. So I'm thinking Abdul Carter. Any qualms from you, or is that kind of where your head's at?
Yeah, I agree. I think if they stay at 3, which in my opinion they should, they take Abdul Carter. I'd be curious, we talked a little bit off screen about it, what happens to Kayvon Thibodeau? Do they trade him? Do they use him kind of as a rotation with Abdul Carter? That's going to be interesting to see, but I think if they stay at 3, there's been some rumors about them potentially trading back. I only see that happening if they were really sold on a specific tackle. I don't think they are right now. They're in a position they need to get a generational guy in. Giants have had some great edge rushers in their career as a franchise, so I think Abdul Carter makes the most sense. And they get a guy who's just a freak of nature in to pair well with Brian Burns.
Yeah, and I love, you look at the Eagles, you look at the Cowboys, even the Commanders. There's some freaks of nature on their D lines. Why can't we get one of our own? Obviously, we already have Dex. I'm not trying to discount that, and Brian Burns as well. But adding Abdul Carter would really make me, like, I'm going to use this word, giddy. It would make me giddy to watch Giants football, so I'm really hoping for that one there. Moving on to the Patriots, where's your mind at for the fourth pick?
Yeah, I believe last time we had our mock draft, we had them taking either Abdul Carter or Will Campbell.
It was Carter, yeah.
Okay, so obviously some difference now. I think my mindset is they go offensive line. Obviously, in that time since we've done our last mock draft, too, Stephon Diggs signed to the Patriots. So some more weapons for Drake May. Obviously, PFF has their needs as a running back or a receiver. I think with Stephon Diggs going, the receiver you can wait a little bit for. But I think protection for Drake May is going to be the important thing. That's the thing with these younger quarterbacks that get drafted early in the draft is they tend to go into a team with not a great offensive line, not great protection. Drake May last year in the few starts he had really did struggle. He was under pressure a lot. While he did play great, he was constantly under pressure. Get a guy in to protect. Obviously, last year we saw some success with Joe Alt being drafted relatively early. He was a solid acquisition for the Chargers. So, we were thinking defensive-minded last time, but I think right now, ultimately, I think that the Patriots will settle on a pick and go with Will Campbell.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Now, we've seen a guy shoot up boards in Armand Membu out of Missouri, but I still think Will Campbell is the consensus number one tackle in this draft class. Obviously, I'm an LSU fan. I've watched him his entire career. Very consistent, to say the very least, especially in a daunting SEC pass rush league. So, yeah, I think Will Campbell's the no-brainer here for the Patriots, unless they do trade back. Of course, we're not doing trades. It's just too hard to predict. But if they were to trade back, I could see it. But how many times is Drake May going to have to scramble for his life? You're going to have to protect him, and Will Campbell does that for the Patriots. All right, moving on to pick 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this one's a little interesting. We've been kind of across the board. A lot of people have Mason Graham going, possibly Ashton Jeanty we've heard rumors of. They could really go anywhere. This team doesn't seem like there's many bright spots, and it's really a make-or-break year for Trevor Lawrence. I'm interested, who do you think the Jags go with? I'll give my thoughts after. I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but
I'm really struggling between. There's about 4 players that I could see going here, and it's been difficult just trying to process it all. So one of them, obviously, there's been a few rumors about potentially Ashton Jeanty going. I'm gonna say he's the least likely out of the 4 for me. I'm gonna say probably not. They have Travis Etienne, but I guess he would be a trade prospect if they took Jeanty. But some of the other guys, obviously Mason Graham, we've talked about that a lot. I still think that's a potential if they wanted to look more defensively. But the 2 guys I'm the most between, which I've heard a few rumors, but obviously PFF has this listed too. But the first guy I'm thinking, maybe Armand Membu. We had him at 13 in our earlier mocks, but I think keeping a tackle going to Jacksonville is going to be very important. Trevor Lawrence is coming off his second concussion in 2 years, and that the one more recently was a very bad concussion. So with a struggling kind of fading offensive line in Jacksonville, getting more protection for Trevor Lawrence will be important. So that's definitely where my mind is at with one guy. But I could also maybe see them taking Tyler Warren here. Evan Ingram leaving in free agency. They're kind of fading outside of Brian Thomas Jr., in the receiver room. They kind of need some weapons on offense, not only to protect Trevor Lawrence, which obviously we know Tyler Warren is a great blocker as well as he is a receiver in the receiving game. So I think that's a potential option too, if they wanted to go more of that hybrid of the protection, but also having another threat for Lawrence to go to. So yeah, like I said, Tyler Warren and Armand Membu are kind of the 2 that I'm between right now, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So I was leaning more Membu. I didn't expect you to say Tyler Warren, to be completely honest with you, but I could definitely see it. They need weapons. They don't really have many outside of Brian Thomas Jr., as you said, who, of course, has been phenomenal, but it would be a nice compliment to them. I just feel like, and this is going to be like silly to say, but I almost feel like it's crazy to pick a tight end in the top 5. I know that, like, based on where my mind is, and I know your mind is, it's not like Tyler Warren's not lasting long in this draft. But you know, Trevor Lawrence, the concussions, make or break. We looked at their O line depth chart. Yes, they got Patrick McCarry to play right guard, but they're not solid at any other position. I think our man Membu has benefited hugely from the combine and just his physical kind of traits that he's been able to show on the pro day and the combine, as well as meetings with teams. He's shot up draft boards for sure to possibly be tackle one. Obviously, we still have Will Campbell there, so I'm leaning Membu more than Tyler Warren. I feel like it's a need for them that they can't ignore, and that there's enough playmakers at the tight end position as well as the wide receiver position for them to be able to invest later in the draft. But I also want to point out that this is a team that I could very well see trading back depending on how the top 4 goes.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think Membu, good shout. I'm good to have the Jags draft him. And I agree. I think this is a team that could potentially trade back if they're not as sold, let's say, on a guy like Mason Graham. Obviously, you and I kind of moved him out of the discussion. But, if they're not sold on him, maybe they do trade back. I could see that. But, yeah, I'm good with Armand Membu. It's funny because, to me, I think the Jaguars pick at 5 and the Jets pick at 7 very much go in line with each other. I think if it's between Membu and Tyler Warren, I think whoever the Jaguars don't pick, the Jets will end up picking up, whether that be Membu or Warren.
Little sneak preview of the 7th pick there, but at 6, we got Andrew's team, the Raiders. The floor is yours. Who do you think they're taking?
Yeah, I still think it's Ashton Jeanty. I don't think there's been any change there. I love the quote where Jeanty came out and said, "It's tackle football. I would draft the guy that they can't tackle." I like the confidence out of him. We know what he's done, obviously, at Boise State. He has a proven track record. Obviously, it'll be exciting to see if it transitions into the NFL. But going under Pete Carroll, who has had a great mind with great running backs, I think that would pair well, and obviously having Raheem Mostert in the running back room as well, a good veteran presence to mentor him. Obviously, they have a little bit different styles of playing running back, but having a veteran guy in will be great. I'll be honest, if Jeanty is not available, because like I said, there have been some rumors of Jeanty potentially going to the Jags or teams trading up above the Raiders for him. I'd be really curious to see what the Raiders' draft plans look like. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded back. And maybe went for a tackle or maybe a guy like Will Johnson. They might say, screw it, and go for Tet Mac too, dependent. But as things stand, we have no trades going. And the way our mock draft's falling, I think it's still Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, and that'll be a really interesting offense to watch. Obviously, Geno Smith is used to slinging it. He did it in Seattle for many years. Now Pete Carroll gets his hands on another possibly amazing running back. I'm going to be super excited to watch Ashton Jeanty in the NFL no matter where he goes, but I'm sure it'll feel good if Jeanty's on your team. And he's right. Like, I love that confidence from a running back. You want to draft the guy who can't be tackled. Like, that's the point of a running back, is to get in the end zone and not be tackled. So to have that confidence and to be able to just dismantle teams as he did last year, I think that's going to be an awesome show in Vegas and should be exciting to watch throughout the season there. So I agree with you. And Jeanty, I believe that hasn't changed in all 3 of our mocks, so that makes sense there. So, all right. We talked about the 7th pick at the 5th pick, but the Jets, I mean, this is clear cut. I don't think it needs much more explanation. We're going with the same guy that we went last time. Tyler Warren to the Jets makes perfect sense for them. They need a weapon for Justin Fields. Justin Fields loves the tight end, and Tyler Warren is the clear-cut consensus number 1 tight end in this draft. So we're going to go Tyler Warren at 7. Moving on to the Panthers at 8. This will be interesting. I personally believe this is going to be a trade. I do on draft night tomorrow night. I really do feel that the Panthers trade or field offers, maybe the Steelers trying to swipe in and get Shedeur in front of the Saints, who have been linked to him a lot, or just something along those lines. I don't know if there's a prospect that they're so sold on. That being said, my mind instantly goes to Jalen Walker, someone versatile that can play the edge and be an off-ball linebacker. They really need that. Their defense, very mid, to say the least. They just signed J.C. Horn to that huge extension. Their defensive backfield should be pretty decent for the coming years. So they need something else. They need a pass rush to complement Derek Brown in the middle. So I'm thinking Jalen Walker there. What do you think?
I'm in agreement with you. For me, it's between two Georgia defensive players, but I'm more partial to Jalen Walker going to the Panthers here. Is between him and Mykel Williams, two guys that have really shot up my board and honestly a lot of people's boards. Both are very impressive and very athletic, both edge and linebackers. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, like you said, with the Panthers. Secondary, I think that they can wait because they just extended J.C. Horn, and in free agency as well, they bring in Trayvon Merrick, the safety from the Raiders. So they've had a lot of focus in free agency on their secondary. Receiver, like I said, PFF has it listed. But it's a young team, obviously. Xavier Legette, he's still developing and improving. They have Thielen, who's the veteran presence, and then obviously undrafted free agent, but had a pretty solid first season in Jalen Coker. So I think that's one that you can give a little bit of time. So yeah, I could easily see them trading back, but in ours with no trades, Jalen Walker, I think it makes a lot of sense. Get a guy who's a hybrid. You can play him at linebacker if you need, but he's also just as dominant as an edge rusher.
And I feel like with Abdul Carter being at the top of boards, people aren't talking as much about Jalen Walker, but he is just as much an animal as Abdul Carter was at Penn State. He was just kind of overshadowed because he wasn't the star per se, because that Georgia defense was so vaunted. Moving out to pick number 9, the Saints. I feel like this one's pretty clear cut as well. I mean, I'm thinking Shedeur. Derek Carr, you never know with that shoulder. A lot of money tied to him. This might be your only chance to take a guy that could start right away. And, Spencer Rattler was horrible. Jake Haener was not good either. They need someone. They haven't signed anyone. They're kind of been in cap hell for like the last 4 years and going into the future. So I'm thinking Shedeur here. I can't believe I'm saying this. Like, I thought for sure Shedeur was a Giant, but now I don't think there's any chance of that. And now I think he ends up in the Bayou with the Saints.
I agree. I think it's Shedeur Sanders here. We had talked a little bit in previous mock drafts, maybe Teteroa McMillan, but obviously it doesn't seem likely that they'll go receiver here because they have issues with the quarterback room. And yeah, I think there's going to be some D linemen that they can grab later down the draft. So that's a thing that they can wait to address. But you're exactly right. Their cap space issues have been a constant issue over the last few years. So they need to get in a guy who's going to be very successful from the jump and who they're going to be able to rely on for the next 5 years so they don't have to worry about it on his rookie contract. And I think Shedeur's that guy. Obviously, we've seen a lot of people saying that he's going to drop deeper into this draft. A lot of people in the media not loving him as much as you and I do. Obviously, I still think there's some psychological concerns with him, some of his mental toughness. We'll have to see how that plays out. But right now, I think the Saints need to get in a quarterback, and right now, best available is Shedeur Sanders. So I'm completely in agreement with you.
Yeah, and that might even help appease Chris Olave, who has been kind of disjointed for them, obviously concussions, injuries as well, and not being as happy as he was at the beginning of his career with the Saints. So maybe that'll help him there. Rounding out the top 10, the Chicago Bears. This is going to be a confusing pick. I'm not going to say that I have one guy that I'm thinking, oh, yeah, for sure. But I think we were pretty much we hit the nail on the head in terms of what they need last mock draft. And I'm thinking Malachi Starks, just a hybrid player, could play corner, safety, and add to that defense and really help them. They've invested so much into O-line, so I don't think that's happening. They already have some pretty good weapons. I know Mel Kiper, we just looked at it before. Mel Kiper had Tyler Warren going to the Bears. Cole Kmet's already there. So I think the pick is definitely on the defensive side of the ball, and I think they go with Starks rather than someone up front or at the second tier.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but obviously this could be a position where you and I just are very, very high on Malachi Starks, so maybe we're reaching. So potentially if they see Malachi Starks being available later down the draft, they might trade back for him. If they stay, maybe they go with D lineman, but I think right now they had a lot of issues down the stretch in that secondary, just a lot of disgruntled play and honestly just stupid decisions in that secondary. So I think they probably would like to address that, and I think Malachi Starks is the best safety in this class. He is a stud. Again, another absolute demon on that Georgia defense. I completely agree. I think the Bears look at a safety there, and I see him tomorrow night going to the Bears.
Yep. So Malachi Starks rounds out the top 10. So We have the Niners sitting here at 11. A lot of different ways they could go here. I'm not really sure. Who are you thinking? Like your top selection? Because I think it's probably D line, but they also need some O line as well. So, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm torn because lately a lot of people are starting to mock an offensive tackle, and when you look at it, the way our draft has gone, maybe if Membu falls and doesn't get taken at 5, we could see a guy like Membu here. But am I confident that with the 11th pick, either Kelvin Banks or Josh Simmons or even Gray Zabel are that much value at that position? I don't think so. And even if you look at some of the offensive guards, we slowly cooled on Tyler Booker, and he's arguably the best interior offensive lineman. Who's next? Maybe Tate Ratledge.
Yeah. Day
So
two.
I don't see them going offensive line at 11. Again, if they want one, maybe they trade back. But I'm looking at it. I think just the way it's gone, maybe because of how kind of up in the air the Niners are right now with their roster, they just go best available. And to me, that's Mason Graham.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. They may go edge, but I feel like at pick 11, as a guy that was projected to be a top 5 pick, I think he drops here no problem, honestly. I don't think we made any hot takes with these picks so far. So I like Mason Graham there and just adds to what Robert Saleh can do and is back in his old position as the DC and kind of adds to the Niners defense as they need it. Obviously, they're missing Dre Greenlaw a lot and Hufunga as well as a safety and a linebacker. But, one way to mitigate that is let Fred Warner make as many plays as he can, and Mason Graham's going to be able to do that, clogging up gaps in the middle, possibly a nose tackle for them there. So we move on to Dallas. I think this is the hardest pick to predict, only because Jerry Jones is all across the board. We talked about this a little before we got on here. I could see O-lineman, but I'm thinking Teteroa McMillan. If he's there at 12, he was supposed to be the first wide receiver prospect. Then he says he doesn't like film and he doesn't like watching football, which is like the worst thing you could say, especially going into a league where film is so incredibly important to all of these guys. But to put Tetmac and CeeDee Lamb on the same side with Dak, who usually puts up MVP-like numbers every single year, I feel like that's almost like it could be unstoppable. I really do think that it could be unstoppable. Now, if Ashton Jeanty were somehow to fall here, I think they would take him. But since Genty's not here, I'm going Tetmac in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think if not here, I don't know where in this draft. And again, Dallas, similarly to the Niners a little bit, they have a couple areas that need to be addressed. And is there really a correct answer? Probably not. And this feels like the best value for where they are now. Again, if they wanted a guy like Amarian Hampton, maybe they draft him here. But also, if they want him, they could trade back. Same with a guy like Tyler Booker. They can either wait till probably the second round or late in the first if they really were sold on him. But yeah, I agree. I think Tetmac goes here. Could potentially be a match made in heaven, but obviously we never know with Dallas. They have a great time, absolutely just defying all expectations and being completely mediocre. But
Yeah.
I think Mac fits here.
Yeah, I'll never forget when they took Tyler Smith. Obviously, it ended up working out, but we were all like, what? This guy's like a 4th-round pick you're taking on day 1. So Jerry Jones is always a wild card when it comes to draft night, and we'll see tomorrow night. But Tetmac, that could be real dangerous for the Cowboys offense. As we move on to Miami here. So originally, we had Membu going here, I think, in the first 2 mocks. I think that it's probably either tackle or cornerback. Personally, we talked about this a little bit before the show. Will Johnson, the fact that he's still there at rank 14, the 13th pick, I think with the Jalen Ramsey news and just not having a great secondary, that's the move. What do you think? Where are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with you there. Obviously, we had this discussion before we started recording. I think Will Johnson, getting a guy in case that Jalen Ramsey does move on. Will Johnson's a phenomenal corner. He's good in man coverage and impeccable in zone coverage. We've seen a lot of great play out of him at Michigan. So I think that would make a lot of sense. And then even it was the same rationale that we had with the Packers with Jahdae Barron. with Jair Alexander as well, where if he leaves, then you have a guy to replace him that's going to be able to develop and be strong. But if he stays, then you just have another stud in your secondary. So yeah, I would say Will Johnson probably makes the most sense. The only other guy I was looking at, in my opinion, probably would be a reach in Gray Zabel,
Yeah.
because offensive line, both interior and exterior, is a need for Miami, and he's a guy that's kind of been rumored they might, depending on the team, might play him as an interior offensive lineman or as a tackle. So I think if not Will Johnson or a corner specifically, that they would maybe look for a guy like Gray Zabel. But I'm down, and I could see it being Will Johnson tomorrow.
So we got Will Johnson at 13 for 14, a new pick in the mock draft 2.0. I think we're going to agree with it unless you have any issues with that, Andrew. Colston Loveland, this has been Andrew's brainchild, really, because I never thought that he'd be going there. But Colston Loveland, I like it now. Now I see the rationale. You have a quarterback battle with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, two of the worst in terms of accuracy and decision making. You want to make that easier? You give him a real good tight end in Colston Loveland who can run the routes of a wide receiver. Doesn't necessarily have the speed, but he's a hybrid, I would argue, tight end, wide receiver, as well as Michael Pittman on the outside, Josh Downs as well, and Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So you want to supplement that as much as possible. He does need a lot of work in blocking, but the Colts have a good enough O-line. They did lose some pieces. I will say that. They lost some pieces to the Vikings, actually, too. But Colston Loveland, it's their biggest need for PFF right here. So I think that's the pick far and away.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, which is my whole thing, obviously they lost some pieces in the offseason, but the Colts had a pretty solid and productive offensive line. So that being said, you can kind of look past Colston Loveland's inability to block in this style of offense. And, he's arguably probably one of the best receiving tight ends in this draft. A lot of people are very high on him. I, as an all-around tight end, am not very high on him, but I think that looking at the way that this draft's been going, just overall, I feel like Colston Loveland would easily be the next Colts tight end.
Yeah. So there you go. Back-to-back Wolverines at the 13 and 14 spot. Now we got the Falcons. Now, I believe we had Matthew Golden going here. Any change on that? Do you think they go in a different direction now? Yeah.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
I kind of don't see them taking a receiver, but it's the trap I fall into every single year. I think they're taking an edge, man.
Yeah.
I really do. I love our justification for it because obviously Penix is going to have a full first season as a starting quarterback. They have some pretty solid pieces on offense in Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. So our rationale just getting another weapon in to have him more and more comfortable and have more studs, it makes sense. But that defense at times does need help, and their D-line is getting older, and it's just a lot. It's been a lot of moving pieces out of that D-line the last few years. So, this might be my third or fourth year in a row I've fallen into the trap of them taking an edge rusher, but I'm going to do it, in my opinion, and I'm happy to have the debate and us change it. But to me, I could see them taking either Shamar Stewart or Mykel Williams.
Yeah, and if you remember correctly, originally I was all for Mykel Williams going to the Falcons, and then you said that. So I'm going to say not Shamar. I'm going to go with Mykel if I had to pick between the two. I definitely agree with you. Like, the rationale is there to take a wide receiver, but we're at a place in time in Atlanta that if they really think that Michael Penix is going to be the guy, they might not need another weapon, or that's how they're thinking. That defense was porous. Obviously Matthew Judon was their best pass rusher, or was he injured? I can't remember now. But either way, he's old. Their defense has let them down multiple times. They probably would have been. So two things with the Falcons: Kirk's picks and the defense were the two things that held them back from being a playoff team. It was right within their grasp, and they couldn't get it, and obviously lost out to the Bucs in terms of the division. So I like Mykel here. Georgia guy goes to Atlanta. He'll be a hometown favorite, and just another dog, another dog out of Athens for the Falcons there. All right, so Mykel at 15. 16, we originally had, last mock was Will Johnson. I'm thinking same position maybe, or what do you think? I think they could be going edge as well. You look at a guy like there's Mike Green right there. You got Walter Nolan there as well. Um, I don't think they need offensive line too bad. I think definitely defensive side of the ball. So where's your mind at?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely defensive side of the ball. And the three guys you listed are the three I'm stuck behind. Well, yeah, either Jade Barron, Mike Green, or Walter Nolan. They're listed on PFF as the three best available. But yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, I think some of the reason is that Walter Nolan we had going lower in our earlier mock draft. So, maybe he was like not good value back then. But I mean, if you want to stick corner, I'm okay with that because this is one of the ones that's been more difficult for me. Just kind of thinking about it of where they kind of want to go, where they need to go. Kind of stuck on them. I mean, they could also just go out of left field and get Kyler another weapon at receiver. Yeah. But I'm okay to stick with the cornerbacks and have them taking Jade Barron if you want that.
Okay, so the question I want to ask you, because this is the other guy, I'll push off Walter because I think there's a better fit down the draft, to be completely honest. But do you think that Mike Green would be a fit here better than Barron, or would you'd pick Barron over Mike Green? Because I really feel like they've had a no-name pass rush, and obviously Gannon's there as the head coach, and the Eagles, when he was the DC, all pass rush. It was all pass rush that got to you at all times. To be able to add a guy that had, 19 sacks last year, 18 sacks out of the Sun Belt, sure, to that defensive line would boost them a ton. And obviously you have Budda Baker kind of as the anchor in center field as the safety. I'm not saying that their corners are great or anything, but I do think that they have the ability to take a guy like Mike Green just simply because it's Gannon's strong suit.
Yeah, let's do that. I like Mike Green better. That makes a lot of sense. And honestly, Gannon is such a weirdo that he probably is in love with that speed, and he's probably praying that Mike Green's available at 16. I like that. I like that a lot. All right. That makes a lot more sense.
So Mike Green, FBS leader in sacks this past season, is heading to the desert in Arizona. So we got Cincinnati at 17 here. I'm looking at this. I saw it mocked there a bunch of times. Obviously, you lose B.J. Hill. And Trey Hendrickson's been playing footsie with being traded for 2 years now. Walter Nolan. So I feel like part of the reason why we had him going later is not so much because we didn't think he was a good player, but we thought that everyone else didn't think he was that good of a player. But now that he's here, I want to belt it out. I love Walter Nolan, and I honestly do believe that he is the best defensive tackle in this draft. I think he's better than Mason Graham, especially what he can do in the pass rush from a 1 technique or a 0, lined up over the center, that middle push, as you saw at Ole Miss. So I like Walter Nolan here.
Yeah, I get the justification. I understand. Keep buffing up the D-line in Cincinnati. Obviously, all of their focus in the offseason has been paying their offense. They need to get some good, dominant guys. Much like we said kind of with the Saints and Shedeur, you need to get some guys in that are going to be dominant from the jump that you can keep on rookie contracts. Yeah. Keep your cap space down. I like that. I like that a lot. Walter Nolan, physical interior, and he's quick. He's got a quick step for D lineman. I like him a lot too. I like this pick.
So I feel like a lot of fans out there don't get the justification behind what you just said, but that plays a big deal into it. First round pick, you're possibly under team control for 6 years. So you have to think about that. You really do have to think about that. 5 plus the option to clarify there. So yeah, Walter Nolan goes to Cincinnati. At 18, the Seahawks, I believe we had Kelvin Banks going here. Last mock, I'm good with that. I don't really think there's much else to it. But
I'm fine with that. Again, this could be one of those where maybe Gray Zabel gets a little bit of a reach up because he is getting more looks as a guard right now, but could also play tackle. But I don't know if I see that right now. I'm just okay with Kelvin Banks. I think he still could be the best fit there.
Yeah, and the Seahawks, for some reason, playoff team or not, seem to always need offensive line. So Kelvin Banks comes in, can be your franchise left tackle or possibly a swing right tackle, depending on Charles Cross and who they want to put where. But either way, very solid player. So now the Bucks. So we originally had Jalen Walker here. Now I'm going to put out my 2 prospects. I think it's either Nicky Manwari or Jahad Campbell, honestly, right here. What do you think? What do you think?
I was leading towards Jahad Campbell more than Nick Eman. You and I, and obviously our good friend, resident Commander fan Brody,
Yeah.
we all love Nick Eman Worry, but I think right here, just more of a focus on linebacker, more of the front end of the defense. So like I said, it would be either like a guy like Shamar Stewart or Jahad Campbell for me. And since we're both in agreement that we like Jahad Campbell at this pick, I'm more likely to lean towards that.
Yeah, and the Bucks, you think about their great defenses of the past, they've always been anchored by linebackers. Obviously Levante David getting old, but he's always been there. Devin White for the couple of years in their Super Bowl winning year. Jahad Campbell would fit that mold greatly and be in there and be able to do great things in Tampa Bay. So,
Especially because Devin White just went to the Raiders this year.
oh
So
really? I didn't even know
yeah,
that.
yeah, he signed in free agency. So that was a lot of the justification of why we had Jalen Walker last time. So yeah, just get in some youth to replace a pivotal part of your defense from last season and the seasons prior. I think Jahad Campbell makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Devin White to the Raiders. I like that move. I've always loved him. All right. Anyway, I digress. The Broncos are up. I don't think this changes. I think this makes perfect sense. Omarion Hampton. Javonte Williams has been good in spurts, but he's gotten injured. And Omarion Hampton is a tank. Let's just put it that way. He's an absolute tank. And I think Bo Nix and him are going to be a deadly combination in terms of the play action game as well. And the Broncos, the sky's the limit for them. I really think that they could be one of the best and most improved teams in the league this year.
I agree. I think that you see a lot of progress in Denver, and obviously one of those question marks is going to be the running back room. People love Omari and Hampton. I like a lot of what I see out of Omari and Hampton. So, we've been talking about this pick for a while. So I have no change in that. It's still Omari and Hampton to the Broncos.
All right, here at 21, we had Jackson Dart here. Who are you thinking now? Because I agree with you. We talked about this a little bit before. I don't think that there's another quarterback being taken unless someone trades up. If someone trades up to get a quarterback, then that makes sense because they don't want to get jumped in the second round or gypped in that way. But the Steelers are like the only team that's glaringly needs a quarterback that's left.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I've kind of turned around to it where I don't think they take him in the first round. I really think they're going to wait till a later round to address it. I don't know. The Pittsburgh Steelers have confused me this entire offseason. I think they're still playing footsies with Aaron Rodgers in the hope that he comes back. So with that kind of in mind, I think they're going to get just a younger guy, later in the draft. I think there will be a quarterback being drafted to Pittsburgh this draft, but I don't see it in the first round because Dart is kind of in that awkward gap between is he a good enough first round talent? Is he not? Is he a second round pick? I don't know if I can confidently sit here anymore and think that Jackson Dart is going to go to Pittsburgh. Honestly, I kind of came to terms with that as we were about to come and talk about this pick. So just thinking about it, I mean, I think two of the guys that kind of shout to me, potentially just you can never go wrong in upgrading your offensive line. So maybe Josh Simmons, high risk, high reward. Pittsburgh's kind of been known to take risks on players. Obviously, Simmons is injury prone, but very, very upend in this class in terms of talent when he's healthy. But other than him, this could be a pick potentially that we see Nick Emanwari go. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
So I agree. I definitely see the O-line. They don't need a wide receiver here, which might be like the more obvious, more deeper position because they just traded for DK Metcalf. They have George Pickens on the other side. They're going to be fine at wide receiver. Now, who's going to be throwing them the ball? That's another question for another day. This is a team that I could see in the second round picking Tyler Shuck. I feel like that's kind of like a match made in purgatory. I'm not going to say heaven, but in purgatory there. I like Josh Simmons, but I also like Nick Emanwari. And I'm going to lean Nick Emanwari just simply because he adds to that already great defense, gets to learn under Mika Fitzpatrick at that safety position. And we're talking about the best safety duo in the NFL if they draft him and he pans out the way that we think he will.
Yeah, and you have an influx of youth in that secondary already with Joey Porter Jr. too. So I think they just continue to kind of structure their defense for the long term.
Yeah, that's crazy. How does PFF have him at 67? He's aced every single test. Just a freak of nature, and his film really spoke to us as well. Like it was pretty impressive to watch him. But Nicky Man to Pittsburgh add to their defense there. So Chargers on the clock. We talked about this a little bit. I'm actually, now that we talked about it a bit, I think they do go wide receiver. I do think they go wide receiver. I feel like there's too many different options here. Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka, but Matthew Golden is the guy that has been jumping up boards. And honestly, I'm surprised he fell this far. Obviously, we're the ones doing the mock, but he's a guy that a lot of teams seem to be really sold on in terms of just the draft process and interviews and just what his tape looks like. So I like Matthew Golden here. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm good with that too. I think a lot of it is because we've had more of a top end heavy edge rusher draft. Because a lot of it was that we had some better, more solid edge rushers later in the first round that we kind of thought would be a good replacement for Joey Bosa. That being said, yeah, I think with with Matthew Golden falling, I think just continue to give Herbert weapons. That's been the thing that has plagued them since they drafted Justin Herbert. Obviously, he's known as the what-if quarterback, but just why not? Matthew Golden, great talent. Obviously, we had him going to the Falcons in a lot of our mocks. A lot of people are high on him. We're pretty high on him as well. Yeah, I'm at the point now, too. Harbaugh's just going to say, you know what, let's just keep building. I'm good with Matthew Golden to the Chargers, too.
Yeah, and honestly, he might turn into dust if they take a wide receiver that early. I feel like he might want a running back again or something there. But Matthew Golden to the Chargers there at 22. 23, we've been trying to set this up. It was the same pick last draft. Jahdae Barron, we were not as high on him as some of the other guys, but this is more so the hype that's been around him and the mock drafts. And obviously, he is a talented guy. He's going first round in the NFL draft. But Jahdae Barron here, Jair Alexander possibly leaving. I know that's toned down a bit, but that's still a possibility. And then they could just use some more help. They lost Eric Stokes as well. And they've been struggling to kind of complete the secondary. Obviously, now you have an all-pro safety and Xavier McKinney as well back there. So Jahdae Barron would fit nicely. I really do think so in Green Bay.
Yeah, I have no qualms. We've had it for a reason. I'm good to stick with it.
All right, there we go. The Vikings at 24. I forget who we had in the last mock.
I believe we had Derek Harmon.
Okay, so Derek Harmon, but honestly, I'm thinking Shamar Stewart
Okay.
because he's dropped this far. I still like him a lot, or Scruton as well. He's right there. But Shamar Stewart, I'm going to give the edge to him. I think since he slides there, he could possibly play in the middle as well. Similar to Harmon. So I like him there. I do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably between those guys, no matter what. And maybe it's a coin flip, but yeah, I'm good to put Shamar Stewart there.
All right, so Shamar Stewart at 24. The Vikings loaded up on offensive line. Obviously, it's looking like the McCarthy show there, so we'll see what happens with them. Now the Texans are on the clock. We had Josh Simmons. We've also had some shouts to Emeka Ibuka. I'm willing to put Josh Simmons just because, losing Laramie Tunsil is so huge. If you wanted to go a different route, then that's fine with me as well. But okay, all right, then we'll go.
I'm happy with Josh Simmons, so I think the justification's fine. And I think they'll wait and they'll still draft a receiver in this draft because obviously they are injured in the receiving room and losing Stephon Diggs. They'll have to address it at some point, but I think right now their focus should be replacing Laramie Tunsil.
So there you go, Josh Simmons there, probably the most athletic or second most behind Membu in this draft, but injury prone, as we both mentioned there. So the Rams are up. I believe we had Jihad going there last time, or maybe a linebacker. What are you thinking here? I feel like this is kind of like they have their guy type deal where it's just some not necessarily best available, but someone that they really like personally in the front office.
Yeah, I think that they're going to go weird with this pick because I'm staring at it and I have no idea. But I know that the Rams love to go really weird and take a guy that they might not necessarily need. I'm going to have them taking Emeka Ibuka.
Okay. Okay.
Because a lot of it, I think that they're going to try to focus on replacing Cooper Cup. Obviously, their offensive line needs some work, but I think that they love to find a weirdo later in the draft that's going to be a stud on the offensive line. And that being said, I think they want another tool kind of guy, similar to Puka Nakua, that they can have their fun with. So I think this is going to be one of those head scratcher, maybe not a head scratcher, but like a out of left field picks. But I think Emeka Ibuka shockingly becomes a Ram tomorrow night.
I can get behind that, and I'll agree with you just for the sake of agreeing with you here. You think about Cooper Cup and you think about what Emeka Ibuka did at Ohio State. Eerily similar with in terms of the gadget plays. Obviously, Cooper Cup's older now, and they're kind of using him differently, or they used him differently, I should say. But that would be a good replacement. It would be an exciting receiving duo for sure, with Nakua taking over the wide receiver one spot. So Ibuka goes to the Rams at 26. Now we got the Ravens. We've had this guy here multiple times. I don't find anything to disagree with it. I like Trey Harris over Luther Burden still. I know a lot of people love Luther Burden, and yeah, he's an extremely explosive player. But everything else about his game, I'm not really sold on. I feel like Trey Harris is more consistent. So what do you think? Is it different, or are you still going Trey Harris?
I'm good to stay with Trey Harris. Again, this is a guy that you and I like a lot more than PFF does, but a lot more than a lot of people do. Burden, too much of an injury concern for me, but I love Trey Harris, and I think he fits perfectly into that Baltimore system.
Yeah, and a guy that can go deep, maybe to be what Rashad Bateman hasn't been for that offense. No offense, Rashad. He's still a great player. It just hasn't panned out for you as well as we'd hoped. So Trey Harris there to the Ravens. Now the Lions here. I'm thinking it's going to be defensive. It has to be, right? Like, it has to be. It just depends where. We got Scruton there. We got Harmon. Am I missing another guy? No, we had Michael going earlier. So what do you think? On the D-line, I feel like it's going to be Grant, Scruton, or Harmon. It's got to be someone to pair with Aiden Hutchinson or help complement him as he's coming back from that gruesome leg injury.
I don't disagree. I think it could easily be D-line, but we also know that Dan Campbell is a freak and loves to go out of left field too. So I'm going to agree more with you. Maybe a guy like Kenneth Grant just to get the interior edge rush. I'm good with that being our pick. But if I wanted to give a hot take, a guy who's not in anybody's first round mocks ever, I would say don't be surprised if the Detroit Lions take Carson Schweizinger from UCLA, the linebacker. Anzalone's been dealing with a lot of injuries. He was out for a while last season. And Jack Campbell, obviously, they had success when they kind of reached on him
they did.
2 years ago in the draft. So if I wanted to say out of left field, Dan Campbell just being himself and taking a risk, I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Schweizinger, I always butcher his name, but Carson Schweizinger going to the Lions at 28. But like I said, for the sake of this and some more realism, I'm good with Kenneth Grant.
Okay. All right. So we'll go with Kenneth Grant. But you talk about a guy that's just been the complete consistency across his career. Carson is that guy. Similar to Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma. We'll see where they go. But you're right. Like, that screams Dan Campbell. But we'll see what happens. We'll go with Kenneth Grant, Michigan guy, staying home, staying in Detroit there with the Lions. So now we got the Commanders. We had Nick Emanwari going here. I still think it's defensive backfield. And honestly, our next top guy in terms of the class and just everything else that's put out is Trey Amos. So I like him there. I do. I think that's a better pick for them in terms of instead of like Siobhan Ravel, who we also have going there. I think he's more consistent and he's just more physical and he's got a better build to be an NFL quarter. Where's your mind? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm good with that. They need to keep buffing up their secondary. I think Trey Amos obviously is the guy that you and I like the most. I'll be curious for this pick and any of the last few teams that are looking at corners to see where Maxwell Harrison goes. Like, again, he, to me, is that very much borderline. He could easily be one of the corners taken late in the first round. He could fall to the second. I think he's a great talent. I honestly, at this point, like him more than Ravel, but for the Commanders, I'm good with Trey Amos.
Okay, so with Harrison, like with any of these guys, especially at the cornerback position, it really comes down to the scouting department and which guy you're willing to see and which guy they pick out, and they're like, oh yeah, we got to take this guy. So on to the Bills at pick 30. I believe I don't remember who we had.
We had Trey Amos going to the
Okay.
Bills.
All right. So Trey Amos, I think it's got to be defensive, right? Like it has to be defensive. I'm not sold on Donovan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name out of Boston College. I don't think James Pierce. I think James Pierce could go here, but for the sake of it, what do you like? Do you think
I don't
James
see
Pierce?
them going edge because they just got Joey Bosa.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm
And
sorry.
they still
I
got
completely
Rousseau.
forgot
You know,
about that.
they have a lot. They have a lot going for their D line, so I really don't see them going defensive line. I mean, it still could be corner. Like again, it could be Ravel, it could be Harrison, because their secondary's kind of been in shambles. They've had a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, they played better defensively last year than a lot of people imagined, but that's still an area definitely to have some focus. So I would say for me, probably secondary is where we should be looking.
Okay, so of those guys, I know PFF currently they've got Morrison, Hairston, Ravel. Any of those guys stick out to you?
The two I like as a fit would be Harrison, if they wanted more of that speed guy, because there is a lot of speed in receiver rooms in that division. That could be a good fit. But I also do like Zary Thomas from Florida State.
Okay.
Again, a guy who's slept on. I think that's a guy like Harrison, borderline first round, second round guy that I think that they could take a risk on. So, I'll leave that up to you because I think both are strong fits. Like I said, I'll let you have that decision.
For the sake of it, we've talked about Hairston the last two picks. I'm fine with going with Maxwell there as kind of a riser, like as you said, like someone at the beginning that we weren't even looking at really. That has seemed to gain a lot of fire and momentum towards this draft tomorrow night. So I think the Bills go with Hairston out of Kentucky.
Yep. And then honestly, to completely wrap it up, unless you have any changes, any epiphanies from our every mock draft that we have, I have the same two picks for Kansas City and Philly if you do.
Yeah, and it's going to be Gray Zabel for Kansas City and then James Pierce for the Eagles. Now, the one thing I want to say about Gray Zabel is that his pro comp is literally Joe Tooney, the guy that they just lost. So it makes perfect sense. Sorry, I'm getting this ad out of the way. Here we go. It makes perfect sense there. And then James Pierce just add another freak of nature to the Eagles, falls all the way to 32. It's like he was doing it on purpose with his personality issues at Tennessee. But just they find another way. They just keep finding a way to put together just a stable and just insane defensive line and pass rush there. So we got our first round mock there. It's our final one, our 3.0, the day before the draft. So many different things can happen. Let us know some of your hot takes. Maybe if you agree or disagree with us with any picks, and maybe even if you wanted to, you could follow along and see how close we are to actually getting it right on draft night. Andrew, anything to add before we sign off here?
No, like you said, I like where our mock draft is. Obviously, we've had some changes from 1.0 to 2.0 to obviously now our final one, but it's going to be a great time. The draft is one of my favorite parts of the year every year. Tomorrow night's going to be fun. Probably will be shocking. Hopefully we don't get a lot wrong, but you never know with the NFL draft. Our mocks are just a good of a guess as that we can get. So, go out and enjoy it. Don't let it ruin your night if your team doesn't draft who you want. I've had many horrible nights recently as a Raiders fan with the draft. Obviously last year was a lot better, but go out and enjoy it. Obviously, let us know what you think about our mock down below. Make sure to, follow along with us, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. But let's enjoy tomorrow night and let's have a fun time watching the draft.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fans in tears, both in happiness and in sadness, depending on it. I love how, as a country, we get together and we let these teams determine our emotions, and it starts right here with the draft in Green Bay. So with that being said, this has been our mock draft 3.0 from Sideline Signal. I am Tyler, of course, always graciously joined by Andrew. As he said, remember to like, subscribe, share, do whatever with it, and really have fun, as he said. I couldn't have said it better myself. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching and enjoy the draft.